Our top story, investors are keeping a close eye on Wall Street today following Monday's volatile trading session. The Dow Jones Industrial Average plunged more than 1,100 points amid fears of rising inflation and potential interest rate hikes. In response, the White House issued a statement saying the economy's long-term fundamentals remain strong. Back here in Billings, the City Council is addressing the recent string of hate acts. Mayor Bill Cole strongly condemned the vandalism during last night's meeting. Pornographic images, a swastika, 666, and KKK are among the images spray painted in several places, including Billings school buildings. A Billings church was also vandalized with anti-LGBTQ literature and spray paint. The city says every effort is being made to apprehend and punish those responsible.
Racist and bigoted criminality and hate speech of this or any type is deplorable, despicable, degrading, and has no place in Billings or any other community. Although we do not yet know who was responsible, we do know that this was not a prank or other minor infraction that can be tolerated.
There is no specific hate crime statute in Montana, but there is a sentence enhancement. Anyone with information on these crimes is urged to contact the Billings Crime Prevention Center. In Carbon County, one person is dead after a head-on collision on Highway 212 between Joliet and Boyd. Montana Highway Patrol Trooper Wade Palin says the accident happened Monday evening when one vehicle headed toward Red Lodge attempted to pass a snowplow and collided with another vehicle headed north toward Billings. A 71-year-old survivor of the crash, Mike Kreider of Billings, spoke to Q2 and said he was driving back to Billings after a day of skiing in Red Lodge when, through the blowing snow from the plow, he saw two headlights coming his direction. Kreider's Jeep was totaled in the crash, but he only suffered minor bumps and bruises. Kreider says he was wearing his seatbelt. He tells us several other vehicles were also involved in the crash as they slid into each other, trying to avoid the accident scene. The name of the person who died in the crash has not been released. On to court news. The alleged pimp accused of trafficking women and children in Montana for commercial sex took the stand and testified in his own defense. Terrence Edwards spent 7 hours on the witness stand Monday. During his day-long testimony, Edwards described himself as a writer, entrepreneur, and romantic. Prosecutors have yet to question Edwards about his claims that he operated a perfectly legal escort service. Edwards, who has served prison time before for prostitution, says the women he employed wouldn't be behind his back and had sex for money. The women testified about the physical and emotional abuse they experienced from Edwards, but he claims he loved them and treated them well. The defense shared images with jurors of handbags that Edwards made in prison. He claims the 3 teenage girls he transported from North Dakota to Billings intended to model those purses for his upcoming website and not to work as prostitutes. Edwards admitted to most of the events, timelines, and actions presented by prosecutors, but offered different motivations for each claim. Edwards' testimony will resume today. On to business news. The Great Falls Big Bear store has been sold and will too close its doors. Q2 first reported last Friday that the Billings store will not reopen after a police standoff in November. Big Bear owners tell MTM News the Great Falls location has already sold. In its place, North 40 Outfitters has announced finalized agreements to take over both the Big Bear store and a former Kmart building. Plans are still in the works, but the store itself will be approximately 82,000 square feet once remodeling is complete. Both Big Bear locations have been open for more than 50 years, and co-owner Chuck McKenzie calls it the end of an era. In other news, life-size cardboard cutouts of breastfeeding mothers will start popping up around Billings next week. In an effort to normalize public breastfeeding, the Billings Breastfeeding Photo Project will unveil cutouts at the Billings Public Library on Tuesday, February 13th. From there, the cutouts will go up throughout Billings Clinic, St. Vincent Healthcare, Riverstone, and Wick from February 14th through the 20th. After that, they will show up at special events around town. People are encouraged to take selfies with the cutouts and post them on social media with the hashtag BillingsBreastfeeds. A report by the CDC showed that Montana ranks #1 out of all 50 states for the percentage of women exclusively breastfeeding at 3 months. But Billings is behind the rest of the state and hopes the Billings Breastfeeding Photo Project could help close that gap. And last, before we get to the forecast, Monday's winter weather has carried over some school closures into today. St. Charles, St. Labray, and Pretty Eagle School will all be closed for the second day in a row today. Roundup and Lame Deer Public Schools will have a late start this morning at 10 o'clock, and bus schedules will also be adjusted. There was some confusion about which schools are still closed today, but if your school wasn't on that list, it's back to school.